Welcome to Team Rocket Garage. Today I'm going to give you everything you need to know if you're building a Lincoln Town Car, and I've got my 2011 Supercharged Lincoln Town Car Executive L, so I can show you everything that you need to do if you want to make everything you need to do if you want to make horsepower, if you want to handle, you want to ride good, you want to turn good, you want to look good. So I'm going to show you that right now. So first things first, the Town Car has been around for a very long time. I have some videos on my channel to talk about 5.0 stuff, but in this case, I'm only going to talk about 4.6 stuff. Check the comments if you want to see about the 5.0 stuff for your older Town Car boys. Maybe I'll make a video like this for that. Anyways, this car is supercharged and makes 335 horsepower at the rear wheels. It is what is called injector limited. That means that it can make more horsepower with more injector. Now I'll answer the question that you're all wondering, how much horsepower can you make out of that little 4.6 Mustang engine in there? Well, the answer, about 450 wheel horsepower. The ADTR Supercharger kit can get you there. You're just gonna have to go for bigger injectors than the ones that they give you. I don't know why they only gave you 30-pound injectors. That's almost what's in there in the first place. So now this is a Vortec V3 supercharger. It's a belt driven instead of a turbo, which requires exhaust, which means that this is actually a California emissions compliant build right here. Really cool. Anyways, this requires that we move our coolant reservoir and put it over there, but that means that we have to get rid of our windshield washer reservoir, and that doesn't look super good, but that's what came with the ADTR kit, and that's what I've got right now. I have some ideas about what I might do in the future, but for now, that's what it is. The only upgrades to this engine is that it has Deechworks 30-pound injectors. Nothing really crazy to it, and then a supercharger kit right on top of that. We have used an SCT mass airflow sensor, much better than the factory one, and a little bit more tunable. That's probably the other thing that you're thinking, well, how do you tune something like this? Well, the Town Cars have a lot of options, and a lot of them are mixed in with the ECU, so you can't just go here, chop this out, and throw a freaking Honda in there like a proper box lifestyle. This is the actual factory ECU. It's tuned for all of this, made 335 wheel horsepower with the factory ECU, which is just absolutely bonkers. Absolutely bonkers that this little computer has that ability built in, but all the 2003 plus computers are just absolutely fabulous. They have a ton of tuning capabilities involved in them. Makes life easy. Now, as far as handling the horsepower goes, we've got the transmission, which exists kind of right here behind all of the car. The transmission is a 4R75E. A lot of these cars, the older ones, since this is a 2011, it has the newer version, but the older ones are all going to have the 4R70W or 4R70E/4R75E. In the later ones, there's a few different changes. The 4R75W is a little bit tougher, and it responds a little less good to the J-Mod, but if you want to know about the J-Mod, I'll link something in the description about that. The J-Mod is the absolute best modification. Every stock Crown Vic should have one. Every stock Town Car, maybe even. It just firms up the shifts and gives a little bit more pressure in the transmission, so nothing's slipping down there.
That was not the tires.
Factory drive shaft all the way back to our rear axle. And by the way, check my stance. On a scale of 1 to 10, what do you rate my stance? Let me know in the comments. Now these are 20-inch wheels, and the tire size is 245/40/20. Now from the factory, these come with 17s that are really narrow, so you can't really fit any meat on there, but these ones have a little bit of meat to them. Not a bad look. Now, being that this is a Town Car, it doesn't have a limited slip. The option for a limited slip is you can either get an aftermarket Ford 8.8 limited slip for pretty much any Mustang. 1979 to 2011 is going to be all the same pumpkin carrier dealio. However, with a car like this, you can just get a Crown Vic axle. You just go get a P71 axle. You just want the tag on there to say that it's a limited slip, and I'll put on the screen what that looks like. That's going to be the easiest way to do it. Also, if you do rebuild the limited slip, I really suggest you do an extra steel plate in there from your old clutch pack. If you're rebuilding it, it'll give you a ton of grip and it'll almost feel welded, but it's not quite that bad. It's just really predictable. And then just leave the friction modifier out of it. So you do need some decent wheels and tires to make these handle. Wheels and tires for these are stupid easy for the 2003 plus. Anything that's going to fit on a 5-lug Mustang is going to fit on this. So any wheel and tire package that goes to a Mustang is going to work on these, although the TownCars use a little bit larger of a diameter. You may consider that you might need a little bit bigger tires. Now, other than the wheels, this thing is a proper sleeper. We have black leather. We've got the mirrors in the back so you can do your makeup on the way to the concert. And pretty much entirely stock everything. But what is a car like this actually capable of? Well, the J mod means that we get second gear chirps. So we shift from first to second under boost. We put a video of that here. So now that you've seen my car, let me tell you the other way you could have gone. For the engine swap, there are kind of two big options. Now, making power out of the 2-valve 4.6 is almost pointless. Yeah, there's throttle bodies, and yeah, there's cam kits, and this, that, and the other, and headers, maybe if you want to spend the $1,800. No, Mustang headers won't work. You're not going to make much more power out of the factory 4.6 without boost. However, you can use the NPI bottom end with the PI top end. So the NPI made its compression with the pistons, and then the PI made its compression by closing in the combustion chambers. If you combine those, you get really high compression. I believe it's about 10.8 to 1. So you will have to run premium, but this combination is well known to make about 300 horsepower at the crank. A little bit of tuning will probably get you a little bit further, as well as all those other 2-valve mods that don't really do much on the factory one, but the compression really does help a lot. This is the question that you're probably here for. Can I 4-valve swap my Lincoln TownCar, Crown Vic, anything like that? The answer is yes. However, the wiring harness needs to be modified, and there's a lot of tuning stuff that can go into that. There's also a handful of 4-valve motors that aren't quite as worth it if you're already starting with 260 horsepower. Why do an engine swap if you're only going to bump up by 20 or 30 horsepower? Not really worth it. On the flip side, there's the Coyote swap. Now, the Coyote shares some harness stuff and some ECU stuff with some of these cars. However, you end up in a position where mixing and matching stuff can get pretty messy. You can have a really good result, but the 4-valve and Coyote swaps can get very, very tricky if you're not good with wiring. So keep that in mind. But if you're brave enough to attempt that, the 4-valve motor out of like a Marauder, a Lincoln Mark 8 are very capable engines. They can make about 700 or 800 horsepower just with boost. Can you imagine 800 horsepower in a car that looks like that? Oh yeah. On the other side, you do have to factor that the transmission in these is electronically controlled, so you got to have something that's going to work with a 4R70W. The 6R80 is just not a swap that's really worth it for something like this, and I don't think almost anybody's really tried it because the drive ratios are just not a big enough difference for a car like this. If I were to go a different way, maybe with the Crown Vic, I would have done Mustang wheels, but I think with a car like this, you definitely want a little bit of a menacing, luxurious presence, and a base model Crown Vic doesn't have that option, so you just kind of lean into it with a car like that. By the way, have you ever noticed how gigantic these rear doors are? It's a big hole to go inside of. There are also options to make sure that that 4R70 or 4R75 can handle the level of horsepower you're making or wanting to make. Most people are going to be absolutely perfect with just a J mod and then maybe a torque converter if you're not a P71. The P71s already have a good torque converter in there, so you might not worry too much about that if you got a P71, but I don't, so I got that baby little torque converter and doesn't pair well with boosties. Now the last thing here, I was lucky enough to end up with a dual exhaust on mine, but a lot of these just have that one single puny 2-inch exhaust, and that's not enough to let that bad girl up there breathe. So You go ahead, you take the exhaust, and you can just go to the junkyard and get the H-pipe and everything all the way back. It's the same for the catalytics and everything up front. You can just bolt another car's dual exhaust on there. Now, if you're a little felon guy, you can go ahead and remove those catalytic converters. However, not advised. The car will pass emissions without the secondary catalytic converters, but don't let me catch you doing that. That's illegal. That's a bad thing. If you do that, you're a bad boy. So that's pretty much everything you need to know about modifying a Lincoln Town Car. It's absolutely crazy that these things are turning into sort of like the sleeper class, because you can get them for next to nothing, and then you can beef up the ponies on that little Mustang engine and send her on her way. I've personally beat some WRXs and some Audis in this thing.
Try it! He's trying! I'm pulling on him! I'm pulling on a WRX! I'm bringing a WRX! Ah!
And then I tried to get around with a little John Cooper Works Mini Cooper, but they wouldn't. I think they knew. Hit the subscribe button on this. I'm going to put another video right here. YouTube has a special mathematical algorithm that tells you that this is the video they want you to watch and that you would like the most. So thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button, and then I'll see ya right in this video.